This is Gamers on Tap, the podcast for the thinking gamer, where happy hour meets gaming culture. And on the show today, I will be talking about the prosocial aspects of gaming. I'm your host, Gunnar, and you're listening to the February 20th, 2014 edition of the Gamers on Tap podcast. Hello again, friends and gamers. Thanks again for listening. So today's topic comes from the Twitterverse, where I requested topic ideas and I received a few. One was from a friend who asked the question, what aspects of gaming can help you in real life as far as teamwork's concerned, coordination, communication, those aspects? And my first thought was, well, this is easy. This is an easy topic because I've talked about esports before and communication and teamwork and you know, all those sorts of things. It should be a easy one for one. I started doing some research and I've got a lot of notes to get through on sports psychology. Yeah. There's apparently the internet is full of research papers. Like, wow, universities have a lot of information out there. So it's been a fun couple of days looking this stuff up. Also new for this podcast, I am doing a simulcast. Actually, it's not even a simulcast. I'm just recording a video for YouTube while I record the podcast. So if you are not subscribed to the iTunes or an RSS feed or subscribe to the blog, you can also go over to YouTube and actually watch me rant while I do these podcasts. And you will also see my amazing professional setup because I have the most awesome podcast microphone you could possibly imagine. Turtle Beach gaming headset. That's right. That's what I use to podcast with. Look, I'm not going to spend extra money on this podcast, okay? You know, this is my therapy. I get to rant for about a half hour every single day about something that I care about. And if there are people that listen and like it, then that's a good thing. But this is my therapy. I have something to get off my chest. It gives me an opportunity to go and do some research. I educate myself. Maybe I help educate you a little bit. Maybe I give you something to laugh at. Either way, I think everybody wins. I think it's a good setup here. But I'm not going to run out and start spending money on this. I mean, not unless you want to, send me a few dollars. No, I'm not going to turn it down. I don't have a PayPal up yet, but if you want to drop a few dollars my way, hey, I'm not above that. Okay, also, I'm drinking out of my mug here, my Tampa Bay Buccaneers mug. I'm a huge Bucs fan. And today is Thursday the 20th, and the Bucs are going to unveil their new logo. I am so disappointed in that. I just had to get that out of the way. I'm heartbroken. They're going to get rid of the Jolly Roger. Gosh, I hope it's good. I hope it's good. Man, a lot happening today. Okay, so as I'm researching this stuff on sports psychology, I started noticing a couple of trends here regarding teamwork and communication and coordination and some of the more important aspects of why a sports psychologist would be interested in studying video games. Team building and group cohesion. Right, that was one of the topics discussed or researched by several sports psychologists and psychologists alike. And then I started thinking, I remember our team building and group cohesion. I remember this in the real world back when I had a 9-to-5. I remember Lean Six Sigma. If you're not familiar with that, go ahead and look that up on the interwebs. Yeah, it's a fancy way of trying to put people into groups and identify them using some Myers-Briggs psychology tests, and you put people in groups so that they are more productive, basically. So businesses and work environments have been interested in team building, group cohesiveness for a really long time. I think Lean Six Sigma was popularized by, I can't remember the man's name, but when he was CEO of General Electric, late 80s, early 90s, I believe. I'm probably wrong on that. But the point is, this is something that, this does have real world application. This is something important. And the fact that you do have sports psychologists looking into studying video games as a method of testing their own theories it's actually amazing. I mean, I was blown away at the amount of research spent on this topic. And why would a sports psychologist even be interested? Well, they start to see that the same dynamics play out in online games where social interaction is at the core of the game development. When people are making these video games, they're making them with communication in mind. It's easy to communicate. They want a team atmosphere. It can be a shooter game, or it can actually be a sports game. You could be playing FIFA or NHL or an NFL licensed game like Madden. You can play sports-related games in a video game. And so sports psychologists find this fascinating because they can pull an enormous amount of data from these games. They can study their theories. They can analyze methods for teaching psychological skills, such as coping with competitive anxiety. There's one anecdote I read in this research paper on a kid who was doing really well in an esports tournament, and he met a qualifier, and the company hosting the tournament was going to fly him out to an opposite coast. So I don't know if he was on the West Coast going East Coast or East Coast going West Coast. I don't know. But there was a lot of money at stake. If he finished first, it was $100,000. So clearly his mother was very interested now, and oh my goodness, I want my son to perform. And the kid seemed apathetic about the upcoming tournament. That worried his mother. So in turn, his mother turned to a psychologist to say, hey, can you sit down with my son and help him through whatever he's going with, because this is important. And of course what they did was they helped him cope with his anxiety. This is what sports psychologists do. So they teach psychological skills to help athletes focus and perform better. So they're testing some of their theories, and they're applying what they know to video gaming, and they're realizing that there is very little difference between the social interaction and teamwork that takes place in a video game and real life sports. That is amazing. I have been ranting about esports and how it's not a true sports league, and it won't ever be truly recognized as a sport until some of the technical issues are worked out. I might have just a whole new theory on this, that video game as a sport may gain its legitimacy actually through psychology. When sports medicine and doctors, they start saying, hey, what's taking place in video games and online social interaction is no different than what takes place in real sports or what takes place in a real team environment, whether it be the office or on the sports field. Well, I think that right there legitimizes that this is not just a game. This is not just pure entertainment. I mean, I would like to see more research done and more money spent on actually researching these types of factors instead of spending resource and time trying to say, hey, we have this accident or this tragedy that takes place. Let's find a scapegoat. Let's blame it on video games. In previous podcasts, I've talked about how people want to use video games as a scapegoat for violence, and you could say the same thing about books. Well, now I'm thinking, well, there's violence in football. Boxing and wrestling they're pretty competitive sports and violent. The UFC. So thanks again to the Twitter for giving me this topic, because I'm really fired up about this, as you can tell. And look, it's really important, because if what they're learning is that people develop prosocial, meaning that the social skills that they develop in video games promotes a healthier interaction in real life as far as teamwork's concerned, then then like I said, that's good all around. I mean, we've all worked in jobs where don't you work better with your friends? I mean, doesn't the work environment, isn't it a much more pleasant place to go when you actually enjoy your coworkers? The same thing can be said, I guess, for the classroom environment. When you enjoy your teacher, at the point when the teacher or your boss is talking to you and you actually listen and pay attention to what they're saying versus, oh my God, the tone of their voice, oh my God, it makes me want to pull my hair out. Yeah, so we know that to be true. We know that if you enjoy your coworkers and you have a good time at work, you're probably going to be more inclined to be more productive. We've seen this in the new industries and startups, tech-based businesses, where it's a much more relaxed environment. The focus is on making people feel comfortable and enjoying their workspace. So this whole idea of, prosocial and productive teamwork isn't just confined to sports or in a video game, but I just find it fascinating that what we're seeing is, or what I am discovering, is that these skills, we're learning them playing the game. Okay, and not only that, now check this out. Video game, this research actually indicates that video gameplay actually develops physical and cognitive skills as well. All right, so this one was really, really amazing. So cognitive skills and physical skills. Fine motor skills, to be exact. There's a research paper, The Impact of Video Games on Training Surgeons in the 21st Century. And that's found in the Archives of Surgery. You can also find it, the details of this research paper at the U.S. National Library of Medicine and National Institutes of Health. It's a .gov site. And so what they did is they developed a laparoscopic skills and suturing program. They called it Top Gun. It was a video game or a virtual surgical game to test surgical residents and attending physicians. And so what they did is they had all of the participants test their skills in this virtual game, Top Gun. But they also conducted a survey beforehand to determine how much video game experience that the surgeons and physicians had prior to participating in this research study. I won't go through all the numbers, but there's a significant increase in that the people who had video game experience performed better. Their conclusions were that video game skill correlates with laparoscopic surgical skills. That's amazing. That is freaking crazy. And so that they were actually suggesting that training curricula should include video games. Isn't that mind-blowing? I mean, if you're a video game enthusiast like I am, this is one of those areas where, you know what? It's not a complete waste of time. It's not a complete waste of time. Leave me alone. I'm about to prestige. Oh my gosh. I've gotten to the highest rank on Halo. Yes, I've actually achieved something real. Oh. These are real studies. And also why it's caught the eye of sports psychologists is because here's some numbers for you. It's because, well, I mean, it's just common sense. Overwhelmingly, people have more video games, right? And they play more video games. In 1982, less than 15% of U.S. households owned a video game system, and less than 5% owned a home computer. By 2000, 70% of U.S. households owned at least one video game system, and over 50% owned a personal computer. Well, that was, 14 years ago. So clearly there's an increase. What would you say it is today? I mean, right off the top of your head. I mean, it's got to be, we got to be pushing 90, up in the high 90s now, right? And probably 100% if you count phones. So it's caught the attention of sports psychologists because people are playing games, they can collect more data from the games. And they're starting to understand that even these commercially social interactive games, by playing them, it produces powerful social learning effects. Like even in MMOs, they've actually done research into MMOs, and that they've reached the conclusion that MMOs actually teach players valuable interpersonal skills such as leadership, learning team roles, team coordination, instructional coaching behaviors, and altruistic helping. That's one of those things like selflessly helping somebody else in the game. These are important aspects to just being a good person, right? And that video games can assist people. Now, they also acknowledge that it can produce some antisocial behavior as well. But you can't discount the fact that people are getting there's a positive effect to gaming. I guess that's what I'm trying to say here. And if you're a gamer, you already know this. So this is what you can say to someone when they say, hey, you're playing video games and there's no application in the real world. Video games will help you become a better citizen and person, according to these research studies, than learning algebra. I mean, how many times have you hear the kid in class say, I'm never going to use this in the real world? I mean, we know that, math is basically the language of the universe, but there isn't immediate practical application. But playing a video game and learning to communicate in a team and coordinate to and achieve a mutual objective, well, that's everyday life. That's the basis of society right there. I mean, I think that's argument's won, right? So then I was thinking about, well, these are video games, and people are going to say social interaction. What about social media and other forms of social? Well, I don't think that Facebook should be mentioned in the same conversation as, say, online gaming, MMOs, that sort of thing. Because I believe that the purpose of social media is more about narcissism rather than teamwork. And there's someone with a blog out there. I did a quick search, and they posted on the 9th of February a post entitled Facebook Before Bed, Wake Up Depressed. Online video games before bed, wake up refreshed. That's the sorceresseconomics.wordpress.com. And it's a really funny read, but it was just pointing out that when you're playing a video game, you're helping each other. There's a psychological bump that you get from achieving a goal and working in a group with other people versus Facebook, where a lot of times it feels like you're competing with everybody else. You're trying to put the best picture up there. You're trying to have the wittiest comment or status update that gets forwarded and liked. It doesn't feel like you're working toward a common goal. It feels like you are in competition with everybody. And we feel like we're losing more than we're winning. Yeah, so I don't know. How could we actually use this knowledge and start up a conversation and get people talking about this on why maybe we should you should have a video game. You should have an Xbox at your desk. You should have in the break room, coffee maker, microwave, Xbox station. Yes, you should. Everybody should take a break about every hour and a half, go play a game of Call of Duty, and then come back and keep working. Yes, this is great. I don't know if that's going to be an easy sell, but I do think that there might be an area where we can bridge the gap between people becoming better or more productive at work versus education. So I might be taking a hard left right here, but bear with me. So as we're seeing that if you follow this trail on all these research papers on sports psychology and psychology of gaming and all the great teamwork skills that are taught, working in a group, all those pro-social aspects, what you also find, what you also maybe realize or come to the conclusion, that these aren't skills that are taught in classrooms. Like I said, they're taught in traditional sports. Basketball, baseball, football, soccer. And these are sports that typically every child plays. Children may be opting to play video games more often, but at the same time, maybe it's a one-for-one trade-off, minus some physical activity. But you're not getting into in the classroom. And it might not seem like a problem right now, but as far as education is concerned, there is some rumblings within certain fields, academic fields, from the industries that they feed graduates into. So what I'm saying is, for example, Georgetown University Law Center Professor Robin West, she wrote a book called Teaching Law, Justice, Politics, and the Demands of Professionalism. And I learned about this book from booktv.org, actually Book TV on C-SPAN. By the way, it seems really boring. It's an amazing program, Book TV. It's amazing. I want to read every single book that they cover. Anyway, here's what I got out of that. And she was talking about high costs of education, the issues facing academia in the law profession, because that's what she does, that's what she knows. Outdated curriculums, and lack of job opportunities upon graduation. Now, I thought about that. Isn't that something that's facing everybody today? We talk about the economy being bad. We talk about not enough jobs out there. We talk about recent graduates being sandbagged by their own student loans. They need a college degree to compete in the workforce. They need student loans to pay for their college. When they graduate, it's a slow, painful crawl out of this quicksand, which is a student loan. That's even if you find a job in the field that you graduated. So I think that's important. So how does this relate to the whole sports psychology and video games teaching teamwork? Well, this lady Robin, who wrote this excellent book, she said that they get pushback from law firms that say that the lawyers that are graduating from schools are not practice ready. They are not ready to enter courtrooms and start handling cases. They want the universities and the law schools to train them better to be practicing lawyers. And it seems like that's common sense, right? Oh, that makes sense, right? I mean, clearly, if you go to school and you get a journalism degree, as soon as you graduate and you get your first job, you should be able to write a story and go on an interview, correct? Well, there's a gap here. And the gap is because what's the purpose of university and scholarship to begin with? What is the goal of academia? Are they there to train workers, or are they there to educate and teach? See, I got my education through the military and learned all about broadcasting and journalism and public affairs in the military. And I attended the Defense Information School, and I was an instructor there during my last 3 years. And I can tell you, we didn't teach journalism and we didn't teach broadcasting, but we trained journalists and we trained broadcasters, meaning I told them, here's the cookie cutter paint by numbers format. This is how you write a sentence. This is how you work, an audio board. This is how you produce a spot. This is how you edit a news package. This is a voiceover sound on tape. I taught how to do it. I didn't teach why. I didn't teach the concepts. I just taught this is how it's done. 8 hours a day for 3 months. These kids just learned how to do and how to perform. Well, in college, you don't do that. You get a more worldly view. You're educated. You're supposed to come out smarter. You're supposed to come out with the ability to reason. You're supposed to come out of a university with critical thinking skills. You're a problem solver. You're not trained to perform a specific function. So why did I get all serious on you? Well, because I think that the gap can be closed if you use video games. It sounds ridiculous, but bear with me. When you go into a job, you want to know how to do that job. The people who are already working there see you as an asset. They want you to be able to perform quickly. The most nerve-wracking days of a new job are those first couple of days, right? Where you both have the butterflies of, oh my God, this is a new job. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. You know, I can't wait to get my paycheck, right? That's like number one. And everything is just amazing. All the little things like, oh, here's my parking spot and blah, blah, blah. And oh, look, I'm close to this really cool lunch area. And, you know, let me set up my voicemail. And you just want to impress all your other coworkers. But then you settle in, the new car smell fades. Nothing is new anymore. Now you're starting to get used to the routine. And now you're comfortable in your job and you don't really feel the need to impress anybody any longer, right? And then what happens? Then you start getting irritated with every little thing. Now you start noticing the social dynamics. You don't work well with that guy, Peter. I hate it whenever he's in one of my meetings. I don't like him when he's on my projects. We had a nickname for this one guy. We called him the Seagull. Because every time we're in a meeting and we're talking about, courses of action and way ahead and, one of those brainstorming sessions, he would swoop in and just crap all over all of our ideas. And then he would get up and leave and say he had another meeting. It was like, thank you very much. That was so freaking helpful. It doesn't mean that what he said didn't have value. He just came in, crapped on everything, and left. How freaking rude. So, you don't want the seagull. That's bad. And you start identifying those people in your office. And the people that you work well with and you communicate well with, those are the people you want on your team. And sometimes you make allowances for, hey, they're not as smart. They don't have as much experience, but you work well with them, right? And putting a good team together doesn't mean you have all-stars at every single position. But communication is important. You have to have people that are willing to accept roles. And once you have that, you can achieve almost anything. Finding that recipe, communication and coordination and those social dynamics, that is key to success in any industry. You can teach that through video games. And not only that, but you can actually teach specific cognitive skills and how to apply those. So maybe in the course at Georgetown University, they should have a course where you're doing virtual lawyering. And you don't need to do it for that long. It can be a couple of weeks. And that would probably, here's my hypothesis, that would probably better prepare these brand new lawyers to be practice ready as soon as they graduate. I mean, I could be wrong, but what's it going to cost? What's the cost of developing one of these games? I think it's worth it. I think you could apply it in every single industry, and we could start doing it in schools. I think video gaming should be mandatory. Video games should be mandatory. I mean, we know that you learn by doing. And that's essentially what in a video game, you have to perform. You have to apply the strategies. You have to apply what you've learned to the game in order to progress. I've never understood how a high score on an SAT is somehow a measure of success. It just means that you have this information and you have really good recall. You can recall the information. But applying it in a specific field of study is a whole different thing. I have never held more degrees or education than the people that I've worked with. But somehow people liked me. And somehow I was able to get things done. And it's because I have this eagerness to want to work with other people. I know it seems odd, as argumentative and stubborn as I am sometimes, but in a group and social dynamic, I do want everybody to get along. I do want everybody facing the right direction. Because that makes me feel good. I like being part of that team. And that's what I want. I don't want to be on a losing team. I would rather be the least valuable member on a championship team than the most valuable player on the team that finishes last in whatever league they're in. I think that would be a terrible feeling. Yeah, so maybe that gives you something to chew on. Maybe that will inspire you to actually have the conversation. I'm going to try and have some of these links on the webpage today and on the YouTube. There's several of them. Like I said, really all you have to do is start Googling sports psychology and video games, and a number of links start popping up. These are some really good reads. There's another one out of, I didn't even mention it, but there's another one out of, oh my goodness, where is this out of? Georgia State University. Online Gaming and Teamwork. Published December 2011. And this one is fascinating. I'm just going to read this. I'm just going to study this one for my own edification, because there's so many things that are illuminating about how video games promote teamwork and coordination that I think will actually help me playing video games. Because like I said, I'm not the best player out there. Yeah, so that's really all I have. And yeah, and I just wanted to remind people that video games get a bad rap. It's an easy target. It's an easy target for older people, politicians, they want to use it as a scapegoat to say that all the ills of society can be blamed on this one activity. One, it's easy to do because if it's an older generation, like I said, in 1982, only 15% of households owned a video game system. If an older generation isn't accustomed to playing video games, then they don't mind labeling it as horrible, destructive, a negative effect on society. Because certainly they wouldn't do that about football. Listen to the difference when a person over 45 or 50 is talking about video games versus football. If we're talking about football, football in America is under fire because of the concussion issue. Parents today aren't necessarily excited about sending their 6-year-old kid out there onto the field and possibly getting a concussion because he's running, straight ahead into another kid, and they're both wearing helmets, and they clank and they fall down. It was just assumed for years and years and years, they're wearing helmets, they must be safe. Forgetting that the whole idea of putting a helmet on was to prevent, it was to keep you from getting head injuries that resulted from your head getting stomped. See, people forget that. Head-to-head injuries weren't a problem, pre the helmet days, back when they wore leather helmets or no helmets at all. You actually had more deaths in the NFL before helmets came along, but that was due to players getting crushed in the scrum. Offensive linemen and defensive linemen and running backs running into there. You see those pile up still today in a modern NFL game. And players are big, they're heavy, they weigh almost 300 pounds, I guess, for an offensive lineman, or more actually. Those are some big boys. But imagine one of them stepping on your head, your unprotected head, and they're wearing cleats, spiked cleats. Those were the injuries that they were afraid of, and that's why you had the adoption of the helmet, the modern day helmet. Now we're learning about concussions and the dangers, the prolonged exposure to concussions and what they can do to, due to brain activity in the long term, 20, 30 years down the road. Do you want your 6-year-old exposed to that, that kind of danger? No, you wouldn't. So football's under fire. And you hear from the older generation, they'll say, hey, no, football teaches all these great teamwork and camaraderie and sportsmanship. And they're holding on to all these ideals that they learned. And these are good things. I'm not saying that they're not, but they're holding on to these things that they learned while they played video games. I'm sorry, Freudian slip, that they learned while playing the actual sport. And what I'm saying is a different generation is growing up. Instead of playing stickball, they're playing video games. Sportsmanship, teamwork, those things are still concepts that are taught, learned, practiced in video games. The older generation is just unaware of it. They look at it like it's some sort of individual action. You're just staring at a screen, getting instant gratification. Some games are designed that way. Not all actual sports are designed the same way. I mean, do you really learn sportsmanship and teamwork playing tennis, necessarily? So the point is, sometimes it's not that we're trying to denounce, or I'm trying to denounce dangers of too much video gaming or video game addiction or antisocial behavior that can be related to video games. But I'm certainly suggesting that it's worth arguing with somebody. It's worth bringing up. It's worth having the discussion in real life with somebody when they try to say that video games are bad. Because they're not. They're no worse than any other activity. In fact, if you study it more, you start to realize video games have more prosocial aspects on life than other activities. Or at the very least the same as an actual sport. Gosh, I hope that the football logo doesn't change today. Oh my goodness, my Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you're breaking my heart. You're killing me. Anyway, that's the show for today. Thanks again for listening. Leave a comment, subscribe, share, tweet, and don't be afraid to have this discussion. Thanks again. I am Gunnar, and this was the Gamers on Tap podcast.